Hey, true believers. Chris Mack coming at you with Suicide Squad number 6. And this was an excellent comic. Not from the standpoint of, oh, this is a first appearance, or this is a major event, or this is crossing over. It's none of that. This, to me, is just an old school espionage tale that happens to have superheroes. And that's what makes it awesome. Because I know a lot of people like to get books because it's the next big event or the next first appearance. And yeah, in terms of key values and collecting, I could see that. But me, I'm a story junkie. I like to have a good story. And even if like a first appearance doesn't have a good story, it's like, this is going to be worth a lot of money and the story is kind of blah. But anyway, the print date on this was October 1987. And, the cover initially drew me to the scene. Did shot there with his pistol, and then the Enchantress and the scope. And then you open it, and it's called Hitting the Fan, and we just see this huge explosion. So immediately, we are dumped right into the action. And then this, I miss when artists can do this for the credits. So before we even get into it, it's John Ostrander, writer, Luke McDonald, penciler, Bob Lewis, inker, Ted Klein, letterer, Carl Gifford, colorist, Robert Greenberger, editor. I miss when they did stuff like that. I don't know. It just really added to just something about it. Just an old school nostalgic feeling. Now, if I had to look back at issue 5 because I have not read it. I don't own it, so I had to read a synopsis. The Suicide Squad are sent to Russia to free this guy named Toya something or other. But anyway, he doesn't want to be rescued, so he slams the alert on the Suicide Squad, and so they are stuck in the middle of Russia. And so they're trying to get out, and they're having to use all means possible. And in the midst of it, the Enchantress decides to just kind of go crazy, sort of like what happens in the movie where she does her own thing, even though she's not a weird rave dancer like she was in the movie in this book. And what I like is when they use the scope to watch her. I just like how the colors go from blues to that kind of like red. It just really adds a scary element to it. And they're saying she's out of control, Colonel, because this is Rick Flag, who's kind of leading up the team. And one thing that I really did enjoy at first is last issue, Penguin joined the Suicide Squad. So that's something that you would not see anytime here in the modern books. So that was kind of a cool idea. Now, Rick, sort of strong arms Deadshot to take a shot at her. And he's like, well, what if I miss? And he basically pulls a gun on him and he goes, don't miss. I won't. And so that's kind of how they get June Moon back. And again, I like the way that, not all the panels look like this. Kind of get that scope look. She gets that look of shock. And she goes down, and this is where we get June Moon back. And so there's a lot of, tit for tat with Flag and Deadshot, just like in the modern Suicide Squad books. But the one thing that I like about this is, and this is what kind of makes me stop collecting the modern Suicide Squad books, is Captain Boomerang was just like a pop culture reference spewer, and it just bogged it down and made it boring. As where this one, in a sense, it's timeless. Yes, it's a little dated because they're talking about being in Russia, being stuck behind enemy lines, because this is Cold War era Russia. Okay. But nonetheless, the idea of being stuck behind enemy lines and you can't really trust your team. That's a classic story, no matter what era you're in. And Rick's doing everything he can to try to keep everyone in line, because he's sort of the only, the straight line guy of the team. And I like how he looks at Deadshot and he goes, you just keep jerking me around, Lawton, and that rep will be your epithet. So this guy here, this is the, what's his name? Toyer Zygot or something like that. Was falsely imprisoned. But I think at this issue, he kind of comes to his senses because he comes with the team. And this is where he forces the Enchantress to release June Moon. And so that part of the arc is over. And from here, it's just a whole lot of action. Deadshot, they say we need to get the Russians' attention so we can get on the train. So each point is like, we got objective A, objective B. We got to get from this point to this point. And so he tells Deadshot to get the Russians' attentions. Boom. Headshot. Ugh. Now, it looks a little hokey for the 80s because I can't get super violent like they can now, but just looking at it here, 1987, you're just like, whoa. And so a cacophony of crap happens as the team just bumbles and sort of has to go on the fly since the mission's already been kind of compromised. And, everyone's worse for wear. June's kind of in a state of shock from being Enchantress. This character, I think her name's Nightshade. Or she's some sort of Russian sympathizer, I think. She goes, "You've compromised me. It's important to me that I remain Firebird, symbol of oppressive Soviet policies. Never was I asked if I wanted to come to the West. You come and you take me, and now I must flee for my life. My words of defiance are made lies." So I don't get a whole lot on this character, but it's sort of interesting how she wanted to be a martyr, and now she can't really attest for that. I'm hoping that the next issue, she starts to kind of see what the team's about, yada, yada, yada. But there's another Nightshade who has to do a lot of the teleporting, and it just starts to wear on her. So you can see they don't get a moment to breathe. Each panel's action. You're not bored. The dialogue is engaging as people are arguing about how we're going to do this, how we're going to get out of this. And it's just so funny. I don't know. I just really like seeing the Penguin in this. And he's like, "You missed. I like to make things interesting." "That's interesting enough, you moron." And so, Penguin can be debonair in a sense, but he's not a very upfront and confrontational type guy, especially in all this. So they finally jacked a truck. They're trying to beat the radio to get on this train to go to this place called Gorky. And again, Nightshade having to use all her teleporting powers, and it just slowly starts to drain on her, especially the extenuating circumstances that are forced upon her because the Penguin points out that we have more people than the plan asked for because they started saving Nightshade and a couple of other people. And so they have to force her and this guy. God, I cannot remember his name off the top of my head. It's driving me nuts. It'll get to me. But anyway, they have to go into the mail cargo hold that has no heat. And so while Rick and all them, even though they look like Russian comrades, these two freeze. And she has to, they have to wait until the train's moving to jump on. And she's like, "It's too fast, it's moving too quick," and it strains her, and she's in pain. And then I like how the colors, again, the color tone changes to this blue, and you can see the breath. And this guy, this Toiver, or whatever his name is, hold on, let me look through here, see if I can find her name. Tresser. Toyer Tresser, or something like that. If I'm wrong, feel free to make fun of me down in the comments. But he has feelings for this woman. And he's like, "Let's cuddle for warmth." He's like, "Even though your heart's for Rick Flag." And she's like, "You've noticed that I have a thing for Rick?" And she's like, "How you feel about him? I'm not blind." And she's like, he hasn't noticed." "Well, that's because Flag's a part-time idiot." "You don't mind that I'm for him and not you?" "Me? I'm jealous as hell, but it's your heart. You're a good Tresser. A good man, Tresser. A good man." So I may have these characters backwards, because sometimes that does happen. But see how, in the midst of all this action, it reminds me of what Claremont said, where, you can have all the action in the world, but what makes the book interesting is good character-driven drama, right here. So I don't want to spoil the whole book. This was kind of a quick review, but they finally do make it back to the embassy, and it just becomes a whole, international crisis with what they had to kick up, and because the Suicide Squad is always disavowed, they don't have the protection of the United States government behind them. So I like that at one point, as this whole thing, as this book, aptly says, hitting the fan, Deadshot just nonchalant. "So tell me, Flag, what do you want to do now?" And that's what we find out in the next issue, which I hope I can find. I wouldn't mind getting issues 5 and 7, because this was a cool little arc. And just the team, the dynamics, and I want to know more, because like, just jumping in the middle of it, I wasn't too sure who a lot of the characters were. And it's just what it is. And that's the downfall of hunting back issues, like older ones, is you grab them where you can, and you want to read them because you're excited. Like this one, I love this cover. And even though I don't know everything about the characters, Ostrander does a good job of at least sort of fleshing out each character, even though you don't know them, so that you care about them. And that's always important, is giving each character depth and motivation, or else it becomes Michael Bay explosions and boom and So anyway, Suicide Squad's number 6, guys. Great read. And if you've enjoyed this book, please first and foremost support your local comic shop and see if you could pick up a copy. And if you've enjoyed this review, we really would appreciate if you take a moment to hit like, share, and subscribe. Helps the club channel more than you could possibly know. And if you wouldn't mind hitting that fancy little Didshot bell next to subscribe, that way as we continue to upload content, you guys get notified. Come to the channel, and we love talking with y'all and hearing your feedback down in the comments below or on our social media pages, which I'll make sure to leave the links down below. So with all that said, I hope you all continue to have an absolutely amazing day reading, and happy hunting, true believers.